There's a quote from Richard Branson that really resonates with me. Complexity is your enemy. Any fool can make something complicated. It is hard to make something simple. And that couldn't be more true to risk. My entire career has led me to this point and to writing the book. In the last 20 years, I spent working with government and corporate organizations where today we help them prevent, manage, and mitigate their risk. You see, risk is complex. So often leaders get overwhelmed with how to manage risk. Trying to find control through systems, processes, technology, and all the implications and restrictions that go with these. Risk can often find its way into the too hard basket, but it doesn't have to be this complex. We believe that risk starts and ends with people. Equally, opportunity starts and ends with people. This book is for leaders who believe in the power of their people and understand people reside at the center of all risk. If you're not focusing on risk with, through, and by your people, then you're never going to truly solve your risk exposure. Currently, 80% of workers are not engaged or actively disengaged. An actively disengaged employee costs their organization $3,400 per $10,000 of their salary. What's this got to do with risk? Everything. I wrote this book because I want to create a safer world. I want people to feel safe, because it's only when people feel safe to fail that they truly feel safe to succeed. I want to demystify risk, to help leaders realize the opportunity that empowering their people offers them and their organization. So in the sentiment of Richard Branson, this book aims to make the complex simple. Imagine your organization operating with people who are invested in the organization's success. They're anticipating risk, acting as risk sensors for your organization. They're bringing their best game to the workplace and creating opportunities and innovation. Now that's a future I hope this book can contribute to.
Thank you for doing that, Carolyn. And again, everyone, welcome and thank you so much for being here today. It's truly appreciated. I'm quite excited and also very humbled by the fact of what's happened as a result of writing the book. I mean, even just take a look at today, we've got a range of people attending the book launch today from all around the globe, from different sectors, but it also highlights the fact the challenges associated to that people are facing around trying to manage risk effectively. And I've actually had an amazing response to the book. I mean, it's only been out a very short time, and the response has not just been locally, it's been internationally. You know, I've received emails and feedback from executives of organizations, government, and even academia, just giving me sort of feedback and how they're sort of interpreting the book. And it's been a really humbling experience for me personally. I mean, I never thought I'd ever see myself, you know, having a book that became an Amazon bestseller, which has been great in 3 different categories. So it's quite a surreal sort of feeling to sort of go through, and even just seeing the media uptake. You know, the book itself has actually had reviews within PS Media, HR Daily, and today I had a really unique experience of when I actually attended a cybersecurity event that was being hosted in the US, which was the Uniting Women in Cybersecurity Summit, to actually see my book being promoted there with a range of other books in relation to risk and security was really quite almost an overwhelming sort of sense, really. So I have to thank each and every one of you sincerely for being here, for the support that you've given me and the book. And I also really want to thank people who also contributed to the book and the way it was actually when it was being designed, the drafting of the book. There's been a range of people behind this whole process that have supported me, and I can't thank them enough. In fact, I also just want to do a quick call out to Brian Ware. So Brian actually wrote the foreword in the book, which he was really very kind in doing so. And for people who don't who don't know Brian Ware, he has a remarkable background and story. In fact, I've done a couple of recent podcasts with him. So if you haven't had a chance to check them out, I'd highly recommend it. And if you have an interest in cybersecurity or emerging technologies, then I really recommend that you check out his story. And also the fact that he's so in tune around risk and risk management also. So him and I have a range of really interesting dialogues regularly. So definitely check that one out. Speaking of people, and also people that I know who are also playing a big game in their areas, I have some guests who are participating in this book launch today. So it's not just me speaking all day. And so I've actually asked a few people who've got different perspectives to looking at this whole risk topic. They come from different sectors, and each and every one of them has a depth of knowledge that's really considerable, that they're going to end up sharing, from their field experience and give their views on the book today. So I thought I'd sort of go into a little bit about why I wrote the book. And I think the people who know me closest and who were around with me during this sort of journey know that I didn't really get much of a choice. This book literally kind of poured out of me, waking up at 1 a.m. in the morning to suddenly with thoughts and ideas that just needed to come out. But when it started to happen, and when I started to see the structure of the book, the one thing I wanted to make sure that actually happened was that the book actually connected and supported leaders who believe in the power of their people, the leaders who really want to create a safer world. And when I say that, I'm talking about creating a better, safer world within the work environment, within communities, and even into the home. So at the heart of the book, at the very heart, is that belief that people are our most effective risk management resource. So we should be tapping into them more, without a doubt. But when I raise the topic of risk, and let's be honest, it's a bit of a dry topic. A lot of people tend to either roll their eyes or they become uncomfortable. There's a lot of responsibilities and there's a lot of consequences associated to risk, which is naturally why people do tend to feel uncomfortable about the topic. But it's also why when you're talking about protecting the things that are most important to either people or to a business, there's an expectation of really wanting to take control of the situation, to be able to manage it effectively. And after all, risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on objects, and risk management is defined as coordinated activities to direct and control an organization with regards to risk. So this is a big thing, and it's an area which creates a lot of stress for people who are trying to manage it. There's also a lot of noise. There's also a lot of moving pieces around it, not to mention the third-party influential factors that really start to impact organizations that are trying to manage risk. The expectations, the requirements, they really stack up around the stress associated to managing risk. And as much as there are, various frameworks and, global risk management standards that are provided to organizations to provide those sort of structures to help them to understand the types of vulnerabilities and threats that they actually need to protect against. These standards provide frameworks and processes. They kind of end up being a lot more like a bit of a tick box for some organizations. And those tick boxes are starting to get longer and more costly to be able to adhere to. And so the one thing that they don't have, though, is that real focus around the design needing to be centered around people. Risk management is more than just processes and systems. It really comes down to being a bit of an art form when you're considering the environment in which you operate, your organization, its beliefs, and what you're trying to achieve through the organization. And when it comes to executing an organization's risk management plan, who's really executing it at the end of the day? It's really your people. Your people touch every aspect of your business, from your daily operations to engaging with customers, the use of the technology. They're the ones creating and adhering to the processes and policies that you've created, right? And also they make decisions that take actions or inactions that affect the business daily. So people really are literally the heart of your business, which is why it's imperative to ensure that you have an engaged workforce, people who can feel that they can connect and be motivated towards wanting to support the organizations. employees tend to be drawn to organizations that they believe there is an alignment in values and a sense that they are being heard, that they can contribute to the business. It gives employees a deeper reason to show up every day and take pride in their work. And that brings me to then wanting to introduce my first guest today, a remarkable woman, Carolyn Butler Madden, she's an author. In fact, she's just released her second book, For Love and Money, which has just been released, so worth a read. Carolyn's also a speaker. She's the chief purpose activist of her business called The Cause Effect. Her company has an amazing reputation working with organization leaders to help them define, articulate, and embed meaningful purpose in their organizations. It's beyond the sort of lip service type of approach, is real difference that she's making. And I know personally because I actually put Anna through one of her programs called The Path to Purpose, and there was so much that came out of it, and it was a really great opportunity to get insight into the work she's done. And so I asked her today to share some of her thoughts with you. So Carolyn, over to you.
I'm incredibly excited to see Lisa's work and her critical thinking around this idea of risk starting and ending with people come to life in the form of this book. I met Lisa last year, May 2020, and we started working together a couple of months later. And it wasn't long after that she started writing this book. Now, given how much Lisa had going on in other areas of her business at the time, I was absolutely astounded at how quickly this book poured out of her. When you read it, though, you understand because you can feel the passion behind it. Page by page of this book, Lisa makes a compelling case that risk does start and end with people. And by the end of the book, you're actually left scratching your head as to how a people-centered approach hasn't always been the way to approach risk management, and for that matter, hasn't been the way to approach business itself. That's what really resonated strongly with me when I read this book, the idea that people are at the center of a business's success or failure because of how they manage risk and how they build and take advantage of opportunity. And if you can create a safe place for them to bring their best ideas, their best thinking, and their clearest awareness to the table, then you are creating an environment that empowers them to be and to give their best. One of the concepts that Lisa shares is that it's only when you feel safe to fail that you can truly feel safe to succeed. And that totally opened up my mind to the possibilities and the untapped potential of business. It connects directly to what I'm so passionate about, purpose in business, meaningful purpose where businesses lead the way in creating solutions for society's most pressing problems, and in doing so they build successful and thriving businesses. How do they do that? Through their people, by empowering the best of their people rather than tying their hands with cumbersome processes. This is a book about leadership. It's a book that invites leaders, those leaders that believe in the power of people to create opportunities, to open their eyes to a whole new perspective on risk. We are living in extraordinary times. These are times that need leadership. We need leaders who are brave enough to recognize that when you do the same thing you've always done, you will always get the same result. But if you embrace new thinking and new approaches, you will get a different result. We need different. We need better. This book is a powerful tool in the hands of people brave enough to step into true leadership. Thank you, Lisa, for being brave enough to write it.
And what can I say? Thank you, Carolyn, for sharing your thoughts and your views on the book and being so supportive of this journey. As you mentioned, you've watched, you were around when I actually wrote the book, so I know that you've had a bit of insight into the effort that went into it. But one of the things that you mentioned is that the success of an organization is really dependent on its people. Actually, it reminds me of a Simon Sinek quote. When people are financially invested, they want to return. But when people are emotionally invested, they want to contribute. And I really believe in that, and people wanting to do things. They really have a sense of wanting to be able to participate. And on that point, that actually leads me into introducing our next guest, and who's going to give us another different perspective on how he's read the book and also the whole point around risk. So Peter Coronis is joining us. He's actually the International Vice President of the Global Cybersecurity Advisory Network called CIAN. So Peter's, he's also, by the way, he's an author himself, but he's also internationally recognized as an authority on cyber policy. So, he's been invited actually twice to the White House to brief the Obama administration around cybersecurity leadership. Peter's, is an internet industry leader. He's an activist, policy innovator. So it's really exciting, and I'm sure you'd be very interested to hear what Peter's thoughts are on the book as well. So, Peter, over to you. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity of being here today. I can feel the excitement, even though we're communicating virtually, but there is something about this time, Lisa, that I think you've really honed in on. And I think for me, the pandemic has really been a really interesting foray into understanding why people do what they do when you take them out of the workplace and see how they operate in isolation and yet continue to try and operate as teams. Then I think some of the observations that you made in the book really start to come into focus. And I think what we've observed is really the exploitation by attackers of some of these human attributes that you point to. And I really think the next evolution of cybersecurity has to become, as it's been doing gradually, but has to become more and more human focused. And I think this book is really a great lens through which we can view that challenge. So congratulations. I read it. I made notes. I love the framework that you've created. That means that the information, the insights are not just passive observations, but you've actually translated it into a model that is capable of being implemented within organizations. So I want to thank you for this contribution. As an author, as you point out, it's if anyone's ever written a book, it's often a labor of love, and you're never sure if people are going to find it as interesting as what you do. But in the end, I think the results speak for themselves, and I'm encouraged, as you are, just by the early response, the positive response that you've received here, Lisa. So I wish you all the best, and we'll certainly be promoting it throughout the Cybersecurity Advisors Network as a recommended reading for all our cyber professionals. So with that, congratulations. Happy to be part of this launch, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing. And I know you've actually also shared, insights around the fact that you believe that there's been a toll on both confidence and on the security of networks and ultimately translates back to humans. And so even within the lens of cybersecurity, regardless of sort of what part of the organization you work with, and actually whether it's cybersecurity or another aspect, that all paths actually lead back to people, that when it comes to risk, it's the intersection with people. That's the point in which, we get motivated, right? So this kind of then begs to ask the question that then, how does the processes and policies and procedures and the technology actually affect, our employees? After all, they are the ones who interact and navigate the challenges of working in our environment. And so does the organization's risk management strategy and the tools that you're using, like technology, help or support that support your people to be successful? Does it impede their ability to perform their fundamental roles? Are there some employees actually getting creative to find workarounds to try and be successful if they are being impeded? These are some sort of tough questions to ask oneself, but it is the time to really start thinking about the questions, and it's definitely a time to start to rethink how we are looking at risk management and the potential impact it's having. Because if your efforts are impeding employees, if this is leading to the point where you have something like disengagement happening, then often that's part of the disconnection with the business, right? It's part of this connection to the purpose, and it can come out of the fact then that employees aren't even feeling there's trust within the leadership, or maybe not even feeling valued or even heard. And so disengagement's a really important point to touch on, and you'll hear me touch on it regularly, because within an organization, I know people kind of look at disengagement as more around a productivity issue, but there's real exposure in regards to risk that happens when employees become disengaged. And and the amount, when we hear statistics, from like Gallup, where they shared recently that in the state of the global workplace, in their report for 2021, they stated that 80% of workers are not engaged or actively disengaged. And the reason this is concerning in relation to risk is that the lack of attention, because people who are disengaged don't tend to be coming up and giving their all. In fact, bare minimum of their productivity and focus is what you tend to get from people who are disengaged. But from that risk perspective, that lack of attention can create errors, and unintentional insider threats is probably the most common type of insider threat you have. It makes up 2/3 of incidents. And so there also becomes in the lack of a situational awareness by employees. I mean, if they're disengaged, do they even see the potential of risk? Or if they do see, identify a vulnerability or risk, are they sort of thinking, it's someone else's problem? So these are really concerning aspects when you start to think about the challenges associated to risk. So you don't want to be stacking the deck against yourself. So having an engaged workforce is critically important, who are motivated to want to make a difference. And the other part around this is when you have employees who are disengaged, who are making errors, who aren't thinking of the well-being of the organization, their decisions and their actions that they take, at the end of the day, it's the organization's leadership that end up being accountable if something goes really wrong. And the Royal Commission findings into the financial sector review really highlighted that fact, that regardless of where the error was, those senior executives were responsible for any of the poor behavior, the decisions, the actions and inactions of their employees, and the systems that the organization was utilizing. This responsibility is not one that any executive can outsource. So, which is why it's so important to make sure we have strong leadership leading the way and helping to set that sort of tone, which brings me to my next guest, actually. So I feel really humbled and privileged to have Mark Crosbiller here today. So Mark has 36 years plus experience in crisis, national security and emergency management. He's actually taken the lead on a range of strategic reforms within the government, strategies and policies. And between 2012 and 2019, Mark was responsible for briefing the Prime Minister and Cabinet on disaster management and providing strategic policy advice on climate, disaster risk reduction and resilience. Today, Mark is the founder of a company called Ethical Intelligence, and he's just finalizing, I believe, his PhD research on the ethical premise of leading people through adversity and loss within disasters. So I'm sure you're also very eager to hear what Mark has to say on the topic. So over to Mark.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. And Lisa, thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in your book launch. What a great title, Risk Starts and Ends with People. It's such a profound insight, really. It makes so much sense. It's so simple. It's why did we think of it beforehand? Why have we expressed it before? I think the reason is many, of course, but not the least of which is we don't actually fully appreciate that institutions exist and the organisations which we operate in exist because of us. They're not natural. They don't come out of the ground. You don't just add water and they turn up. We've created them principally for two reasons, two interrelated reasons: to move ourselves away from any sense of suffering or harmfulness or threat or peril, and to move us towards happiness or well-being or human flourishing. And pretty much anything that we do as a human species is predicated upon those two thoughts or those two intentions: to move away from harm and to move towards some sense of happiness or well-being or flourishing or goodness. And that's where we all want to be, but we can't always get there, and often we don't get there because of the way we think, speak and act. So we engender a lot of fear into our organisations and into our own minds, and that forces us to do things which are less than helpful, and some would argue even harmful. Getting to the nub of the issue, the risk starts and ends with people, really gets to the heart of risk, I think, and this book does it so eloquently. I really love the aspect of the safe zone. I think it's incumbent upon leadership in any context of organisation to create safe space for expression, for adventure, for courage, for failure, and to do it in such a way that is supportive, respectful, ethical, has a moral basis to it. And that moral basis is essentially to care for one another, to care for oneself as well, of course, to show compassion, to limit harmfulness in all its forms, is a way of setting up a safe space. In my own leadership and my own research in my PhD, it became incredibly obvious that the vast majority of people, particularly the organisations for which this book refers to, do want to or are trying to do the right thing. Sometimes unskillfully, of course, and sometimes with a whole lot of barriers in the way. But what really helps is exemplification. When leaders give permission for people to feel, to think, to fail, to be adventurous, to be committed, to be relatable, then people follow that. If leaders can act virtuously and show compassion and kindness with wisdom, with profound wisdom from lived experience and the wisdom of the sages, then we get the best out of our people. But if we don't do that and we can't create a safe space, we get the opposite, and we inherit a whole lot of risk and harm into our organisations that we're ultimately trying to get rid of through process, system, procedure, rules, and enormous amounts of investment, without really looking at the nub of what's going on, which is that our people may not be happy, or our people may not be motivated, or our people may not be supported. And if we look a little deeper, we'll find out that the leadership is lacking in some level. Everything, I think, sheets home to leadership in the context of risk, which is what Lisa talks about in her book a lot. I think as leaders, we need to continue to improve, and particularly to rediscover what it means to be virtuous, what it means to have practical wisdom, what it means to bring the lessons of life into our leadership frame, and all of those things that we learned that moved us away from suffering and towards happiness, or cause suffering to ourselves and others that we would not want to replicate or duplicate or have to experience again. And that is the basis of our relatedness in all institutions and organisations. And that sense of understanding of that notion of non-harmfulness and where harm comes from our thoughts, our words and our actions, and doing something about that is an incredibly easy investment in our organisations, which reduces so much of the risk that we're trying to get rid of through other processes. So I really commend Lisa for her book. It's a great insight. It is profound in every sense of the word. It's exciting. I think it gives leaders something to work with. It gives us a way of being in the world. It gives us an opportunity to change for the better, for all of our sakes. And it takes away the sterile and cold and calculated logical nature of risk and it gives it a heart. It gives it a spirit. It gives it great insight as to what it really means to be human. And that is, as I said, is to move away from suffering and harmfulness, threat, hazard and peril, and to move towards happiness, well-being and flourishing. the best of what it means to be human. Lisa, congratulations. It's been a great pleasure helping you on this journey, and I look forward to working with you, your colleagues and your clients for many years to come to shift the ground on risk and to make organisations safer, healthier, happier places that's productive for everybody and benefits the greater good for the greater number. Good on you, Lisa. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Mark, and I really appreciate your words of wisdom and always your insights. You touched on a really
Lisa, you're on mute.
I'm going to unmute myself. Carolyn, I think you might have been getting a little bit gun happy over there with that mute button. So, so I'll say, Mark, I really appreciate your words of wisdom and your insights. You always give me a different perspective, and we've had many conversations in relation to, just human behaviour, people, leadership, risk. So you always give me a deeper consideration to always ponder on. So I thank you for the gifts that you constantly give me in that way. But Mark, you also touched on a really important area being the safe zone. You can actually optimize a work environment with a safe zone. The idea is that it's the best way to create an environment that allows people to feel safe to succeed without that fear of failure. Treat people's growth and their progress as a learning tool and encourage them to, and support them, especially when they're stepping into new fields and new responsibilities. Set them up for success, right? Because it's only when people feel safe to fail that they truly feel safe to succeed. And that's not talking about poor performance, as I'm sure you all understand. And the other thing to really know is that a safe zone, within a safe zone, there's no such thing as, no blame shifting, no scapegoats, no one gets thrown under any buses, no one gets hurt in that kind of way. But it must be demonstrated from the top down through all levels of leadership to do this. And I remember reading, as I was writing the book, a review that was written, a Harvard Business Review actually, that was written by an analyst, Roger Jones, who stated that CEOs should actively encourage all team members to speak without fear of consequences. That fosters honesty, debate, and better decisions. And talk about decisions, it's going to lead me into introducing my next guest, which is Ian McKenzie. So Ian has, 40 years in the public sector. Ian is really passionate about improving outcomes for people and in their communities. He tends to listen to stories of individuals and through trying times. And Ian has a mantra that it doesn't matter how we feel about a job we've done. He's a big believer in believing all that matters is how we have made others feel. And so Ian has, been a first responder. He was the Deputy Commissioner of Fire and Rescue Services, the Queensland Inspector General Manager, and he's also been a senior advisor to the Commonwealth Minister for Emergency Management through the Black Summer Fires. Ian he's been a driver of some of the biggest changes in how emergency and disaster management has evolved. And I'm also really humbled to say that today, Ian actually works within Unearth, and he's been a big part of driving the work that we're doing in the recovery space within the public sector, and our ability to start working closer with communities and with government. And I'm really excited by how our Protect framework that you've read about in the book is actually being applied within the recovery space. And, we really see it as a game changer. So there's exciting things happening in that space for us. But for now, I want to hand over to Ian. So thank you.
I wanted to record this video to thank Lisa for her passion and commitment to this topic and providing insight and alternatives for what can be an incredibly daunting topic. Demystifying risk is not a simple task. The concept that risk starts and ends with people is something I'm passionate about and believe that considering consequences for people is something that should be deliberate in all of our decision-making processes. We may not all be in a position to drive change to address global threats, but we are all in a position to understand the risk that surrounds us and do something to deliver a safer, more secure, more certain future by simply embracing the philosophy that people are at the centre of risk and should be at the centre of our thinking. Lisa highlights that risk identification, assessment, and management can easily become an all-consuming business and sets out to demystify the process. At the end of the day, risk management is all about planning to reduce or accept the chance of something happening and the consequences. More importantly, it's all about making informed, evidence-based decisions, taking into account the most important of all factors, people. And if it's about people, then it's personal. So the challenge that Lisa rightly highlights is that of leadership and the importance of leadership creating an environment where it's safe to talk, safe to succeed, and safe to fail, a safe zone. Creating that environment pivots on leadership that turns risk into opportunity. We have all seen and felt the impacts of nature. We know risk is real. In recovering from disaster events, we talk about built and natural environments, the economic environment, transport and supply chains as being the pillars of recovery. The reality is that society is a complex system that revolves around people, their basic human, social and cultural needs. And every decision taken in any of these pillars impacts people. There should be no surprises here. The unprecedented is not an excuse for being unprepared. We need to move from planning on how to deal with impacts to things to dealing with the consequences for people. It's not about houses being damaged, it's about people being homeless. It's not about businesses being impacted, it's about unemployment. It's not about roads, electricity and sewerage, but about livability for the people. The message is clear. Whether we're thinking about business, society, politics, or just going shopping during a pandemic, risk starts and ends with people. Our challenge is to recognise this and be the leaders that turn that risk into opportunity. Demystifying that journey is difficult. Unlocking the power of your people and building a safe environment are critical. Lisa provides the framework to take us on that journey. Thank you, Lisa.
And thank you, Anne. I really appreciate your words and your insights. And by the way, I really like the backdrop in that recording that you had there. And I'll have a bit of a smile. So just so you know, everyone, that's actually one of the, I guess, the visual ones we have in our new brochure and the whole public safety side. So great use of it, Anne. Well done. You also heard Ian talk about the importance of decisions and actions, by executives and leaders and the implications that they can have. It's a point that I often talk on myself because there is a great responsibility associated with the decisions that executives and leaders do make, because they can have major effects on others in various different levels. So it's something to be incredibly aware of. And also the other part that, there's a range of things that Ian talked on, but he also talked around the language. So again, language is something that, we're trying to play a part in, and that's to really get back to a common language, change the language, create the idea of that sort of safe zone so we can have more deeper discussions using common language without having smoke and mirrors. It's just really breaking down those barriers and simplifying. Because a lot of the discussions that tend to happen can be confronting for a lot of people. We're talking in sensitive areas. But there's one point that I really want to make, and that is that risk isn't something that we need to fear. It's really something that we need to understand. which is why you'll often hear me mention the Joseph Campbell quote, because that always comes to mind, which is, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And that's how I see risk, is that, that coin, opposite sides. One side has risk, one side has opportunity. I believe that most of us already know that we need to make a change in how we operate in our organizations, especially in relation to risk. We need to find ways to simplify the discussions, but we also need to create an environment that we can bring out the best in our people. So my challenge to you is to do something about it. So I invite you to buy the book, or to buy another copy of the book, to give to someone in your organization, to start a conversation, to start to raise the awareness together, to, as a collective, to start a movement. Let's start to really, use the book, which is one of the things I really wanted it for, is a prompt to start a conversation, right? And I welcome and I invite you to share your feedback with myself. If you got value from the book, then I hope you do share the feedback. And if you really want to help start a movement, then a review on Amazon or Booktopia is always gratefully appreciated. But the whole point of this isn't about a promotion, even just of the book. It's about the topic. It's about driving the awareness. It's about trying to create discussions that really can bring people to the table to make a change. It's about changing not just the mindset, but, excuse the pun, this is the time we can unearth a new perspective on risk. The benefits of a person-centered approach to risk extend well beyond just risk mitigation. It has positive benefits for the reputation, the revenue, improving the workplace culture. By changing your approach to risk, focusing on risk with, through, and by your people, that's how you're truly going to reduce your organizational risk exposure and drive transformational change. I know there's reward in the right type of effort. So I guess it comes back to really the decisions for yourselves as to, what decision and action are you thinking in that you want to take. So in closing, I want to share an important decision that I've made myself and my team have made, with our purpose to create a safer world and look for initiatives and innovative ways to work with partners to do just that, create a safer world. That's part of the reason we decided to start supporting Give It and around the book release. And so you may have already heard me mention, if you've seen any other sort of videos that have gone out, that we're literally giving $2 for every paperback version of the book sold to go to Give It. And the reason that we're doing that is it ties in closely to what we believe in trying to make a difference and really trying to find ways to demonstrate that. So back to my point earlier, if you feel like gifting a book, then it's not only just going to be doing greater good on a discussion around risk, you're also doing a little bit to contribute to people in Australia who need a helping hand. And every little bit makes a difference. So what I'd like to do is also thank everybody who has attended today. I can't thank all of you enough for being here to be a part of today's session with me. And I sincerely want to thank my guests, Carolyn, Peter, Mark, and Anne, who have all been so gracious in sharing their thoughts. And for anyone who might have some questions, there's a couple of things that can happen. You can either put something here in the chat box, and I'm happy to respond to that. But what I'm going to do in closing out the session today is I thought it might be really nice to be able to play the Give It video. And a parting message, I really just want to say again, thank you to everyone and keep safe, but please start a dialogue, start one with me, start one with someone else. And let's see how we can really start to empower our people to make a difference in their business, help to manage our risk, potentially transform their lives. So thank you again, everyone, for attending today. Truly appreciate it. Well, there's a couple of things that I would like to achieve as the outcome for the book. We've actually decided to give $2 from every book that's sold to do something with an Australian charity that's doing so much for communities in Australia. Give It is actually a matchmaker with a smart way to give. They match people who want to give to people in need. And there are many people out there today that want to really help and give to those people in need. What Give It offer is the confidence of knowing that the item or donation that you provide is absolutely going to somebody who needs it the most. It's not just about providing a donation. I really want to make you aware of the incredible work that the Give It team are doing, and the differences that they are making daily in communities and families. And the more we are able to support them, the more they can do for others. I hope you take a few moments to learn a little bit more about Give It and why the Unearth team is so passionate about wanting to support them, and why we're donating $2 from every paperback version of the book being sold. Every little bit makes a difference.
We all know the expression, your people are your greatest asset. We at Unearth believe that unequivocally. We believe when people feel safe to fail, it's only then they truly feel safe to succeed. So Unearth came to exist out of a passion and a frustration to actually service customers on their own terms. Unearth exists out of an absolute belief that people have the right to be safe. I have my own personal past experience. I've been in a very, sort of sensitive environment where there were risks associated just to my upbringing. I think a lot of people in today's world have in some shape or form around domestic violence and things like that. So, Unearth really does exist to create a safer world, because we believe that every single person has the right to have an opportunity in life to feel safe and to do the best they can in their own personal life story. Our commitment to our customers, our promise, is to protect the house. It's a metaphor for their organisation, anything and everything that's important to them, their IP, their data, their people. It's making sure that we're protecting what's important to them. Risk is something you don't need to fear. You just need to understand it. And to do so, you need to break it down with the right approach. At Unearth, we use our skills, our influence, and our reach to create a safer world.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Though if anyone does want to ask, we've got actually a few minutes left. If anyone does have a question, I'm actually happy to stick around and answer any too.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Lisa. It was a terrific launch. Well done. And congratulations on a fantastic book.
Thank you, Ross. Look forward to talking with you very soon.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Lisa.
Well done, Lisa.
Thank you, guys. Love your work. Appreciate the support. Thanks, Alice. See you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Congratulations. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Catherine. It's great to have you there. Thank you for your support.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Hello, Lisa. That was emotional. I loved it. Woohoo!
Thanks, Chris.
All right, take care. Thank you.
We're talking soon. Thank you.
Congratulations, Lisa.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate you being here.
Congratulations, Lisa.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you real soon.
Will do.